Hello, traders. It's 8:01 a.m. Chicago time on Wednesday, the 25th March, 2020. Thanks for joining me today. Let me turn down the volume just a little bit. This is episode number 1720. Thanks for coming here. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results this morning. Markets are coming off a little bit from yesterday's closing levels. Although the overnight session shows the market kept running, which was expected given the way we closed in the U.S. indices. However, currently trading just below closing levels from yesterday. The leader still today is the Dow, up 133 points or 0.65%. Followed by the euro. The euro stocks are up 6 points, 0.23, which isn't all that much. The laggard this morning is crude oil. Crude is off 59 cents, down 2.46%. Crude still has, well, crude fell this morning from its balancing point and looks likely to continue lower. The Russell's also off a fair amount, down 17.6 points or 1.6%. Gold is off $22.80 or 1.37%. So I would say a slight lean on risk off this morning after yesterday's gap and goes scenario, which I discussed in great length. That was a long trader bite yesterday to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page with regard to the fact that or the idea that if we don't close the gap zone early, then the long side is the winning side, which worked out very nicely in my opinion. So that's where we stand. The um, the news feeds are basically attributing the action here to the passage of the potential passage of a bipartisan $2 billion package from the U.S. Senate to help stimulate this economic impact of the coronavirus. Um, Also, the U.S. automakers extended their shutdown into April. Um, Overall, the market is already priced in, I believe, this a good portion of this $2 billion package, $2 trillion package, and it's looking like we're having a bit of a break day today. Europe and Japan posted their biggest daily gains, and the dollar and gold have slipped a little bit. But so overall, there's not much to discuss here. The interesting thing is, I'm finding, again, in my opinion, the market's quite a bit easier to read. Um, Quite a bit easier to read. There's still the action still dominated by news, in my opinion. There's a lot that's coming across from around the planet. One of the things that was interesting, White House's Navarro said that they're not going to extend a 3-month tariff deferral, that they will, in fact, enforce a tariff deferral, even though we're already at a standstill when it comes to trade, pretty much. So I'm not sure what the story is there. And the numbers out of Germany show that confidence is slumping. So that's where we stand this morning. Um, Overnight, the Great Britain had its inflation rate came in at 1.7 versus 1.5 expected. German IFO came in at 86.1 versus 87.7. Durable goods came out about a half hour ago, came in at 1.2%, much higher than the negative 0.7 expected. And then we're looking for the U.S. Crude stocks, gasoline and distillates at 10:30, and that's where we're headed today for in terms of what is planned for the session. Let's switch gears and look at what was expected yesterday. Yesterday, we were limit up at the time of the trader bite at 23.3350. The expectation is for it to open, take a small dip, but overall leave the gap zone open, and we're pushing to the long side. And you can see the top here is around 24.45, 24.45 with pauses at 2400. And 23.45. So the market ended up opening a little bit higher. Pretty much scenario one was on point. The market opened a little bit higher here. Let's look at it on the trigger chart, just because we're not getting the crazy rotations that we normally do. We switch the scale here. Oh, no, let's go back to 180. So we open a little bit higher, 24.46, about 13 points above the limit up. We attempted a small push down and then immediately pushed up, consolidated. There was a lot of balance here. And then once we started to push higher, you can see it's pulling back against key reference areas. For me, at least, the market generated reference areas, the mid, and then we pushed through to 24.27. Very, very deep pullback, comes back to the mid here again, fails through, tests the mid from below, attempts to push lower, unable, and then it ends up running into the close into 24.40. So pretty much what was expected. I found yesterday's auction a little bit easier to read, as I said. The rotations seem to be fairly logical, or following the normal kind of discovery process, making it a little bit easier to read. The things to note is we have a pretty good taper on the low, on the profile. The profile is pretty boxy, so there was some pretty active price discovery across the entire price range. We ended up with a weak high with the point of control at the high. The expectation is very, very high probability of it continuing overnight. 24.45 is really a big area here, 40 to 45, that we need to pay attention to. But we ended up pushing overnight all the way up to 24.98, almost getting to 2500 before pulling back. Yesterday's profile shows that the auction to the upside was not complete just yet. The overnight session had us open and push higher as expected, 24.70, pull all the way back to what is the IB low, the prior day's high, the mid VWAP of the prior session. That holds. The Europeans come in, we buy it up and we push higher, and then we take all of that back and are consolidating currently. This does look weakish to me if we're not able to get above the 24.40 to 45 area this morning. I'm expecting it to rotate down. Okay. That's a good point. I guess YouTube is getting slammed because everybody's at home and is streaming and so on. So I believe that they default to a 480p, which is terrible for what we do here. Do go to the bottom right. If you're looking at this on the convergenttrading.com website, you can hover over the image, the video, click on YouTube. Once you get to YouTube, just simply click on this little thing. See this down here? And then switch the quality to 1080p if you can. Some areas are not going to be able to do that because YouTube is restricting that. But it's defaulting at 480, which is not very good. Anyway, so I'm expecting this to kind of test up into 24, 40, 45. That's the line in the sand for me today. And then I'm expecting it to roll over. It's looking kind of weak. If you look at the overnight profile, it did push all the way up to 2,500 and just immediately got rejected. We found sellers up there, and therefore I expect this to continue to challenge and push buyers down from here. We do have also a fairly weak low. We've got multiple tests on the low. And so I'm just the way the structure, and I'm just telling it like it is, the way the structure is set up is that it's looking kind of weak today as long as it does not breach this 40 to 45 area. Okay, did I say 40 to 45 enough? That's where we stand. I believe today is going to be a digestion day, a coiling day. We'll see how that goes as the market kind of has priced in this big stimulus, and now we get to see the truth, right? What does the market really think of what's occurring? Here's what I've got in terms. So that's the overnight session. Overnight volume is very healthy at 720,000. Here's what the order flow looks like. Just shifting, looking through the session, you can see it just squeezing right through this 24-29 area from below as we were pushing up. You could see the liquidity coming in and holding it back for a really nice 10-point rotation down. 10 points used to be about a half a rotation, and now it's a full rotation. You can tell that the volatility is actually starting to slow down, is collapsing a little bit. That's not such a bad thing. Uh, so we finally pushed through, and we're squeezing higher into the area I just discussed, 2440 to 2445. The overnight session is full of discovery. There's quite a bit of structured trading here in the overnight session. A fair amount of resistance on the way up. Look at this block. Look at this block as the market moves up. This block comes in. You can see these orders kind of shifting up with the market. The market comes, the offers come in, and they just start to smack right here. You have a really strong delta as there's some heavy lifting going on as they squeeze through that size. That size occupied about 18 points of range and got lifted. This is like getting under a heavy object and just pushing up with your back to push higher, and it ended up squeezing all the way up to the 2500 before turning over. Once it turned over, a lot of this, it seemed like a lot of these longs started to puke because in that same region, if I zoom in, you'll see a lot of delta dots here, green delta dots. Those same dots show up here, but on the sell side, it just seems like those who lifted this ended up having to puke it up and push back down. So that's what we saw very early on. In fact, from the time when we opened this morning, let me squeeze back. What is the deal? Oh, here we go. From the time when we opened, we could see that offers were sticking as it pushed into 2470 here. Pretty good delta lift. You could see it right here. Really strong delta lift that did not break that level. And next thing you know, sellers step in and off to the races it goes to the low. And it pushed to 2400 where liquidity rested there. It fought that area. It fought that area for a pretty decent bounce, about 30 points, before coming back to push through and put in the lows of the overnight session, which were at 86. So it didn't get very far below 2400, but this size right now, it seems to be trading out, and that's the point I'm making in terms of order flow. It's really important to watch for when that size comes in. Size that appears after the low or the high is made is not all that important. Those are resting orders for the next run up, probably. Um, um, and overall, I don't really care for size that shows up. For example, after the low is put in, you get an orange or red band down here. I don't really care about that. What I care about is size that is increasing, kind of like here, as the price is moving up into it. That's how I'm using the heat map and the order flow. This is this makes it very easy to visualize. Right here, 24, 45 to 40, this area right where we are, very important battleground here. If these guys are able to hold the offer, this is likely to rotate back down into 24.30, the last collision and zipper zone down here. So from here, I'm expecting this to rotate lower. We'll see what happens before we open here, but that's what I'm looking for during this time. So let's take a look at what's expected for today. Frames being dropped. I don't see frames being dropped. Is the service choppy for you? YouTube seems to be lagging this morning. All right, let's move into what's expected for today. I'm going to keep this very, very brief. So what are we expecting for today? Here's where I'm looking at. We are pushing. Look at how it dropped here. I'm going to bring you back. That was a nice little setup that I just talked about. See that? 45 to 40. This is a pretty decent area and a nice little rotation. Remember, the last area below is right here in the 30 range. This was a trade setup right here, of course, uh, right in the middle of the trader bite, but I set that up for you again, 40 to 45, really, really important, and we see failure here. If we push back into this area, this means there wasn't enough interest to sell it, and it's likely to blow through, and it changes how I'm looking at things this morning. Again, let's get back to our plans for today. Here's what we've got. We're right up against the high of yesterday. Very critical area right here. Very critical area right here. The expectation is a struggle, responsive selling comes back into the 2420 area and tests that low and tests the range of yesterday, the point of control, the lower point of control yesterday, and comes back up to consolidate up in here. That's scenario one, expecting a rest day. Scenario two, 24.40 to 45 doesn't hold. Open auction, pushes up, uses it as support, and then starts to move swiftly towards 24.75, 2500, consolidates, pushes in as far as 15, 25.15 before coming back to 2500 to rest here. Those are the two key plays of the day, and it really is dependent on this area right here that we're in. Do we hold or do we not? And if we push through, do we hold it on a retest or do we not? That's the if-then kind of structure there. I leave you there. The looks like, yeah, YouTube's not able to keep up. I'll leave you with that. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Good luck, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care.